Good morning, Misfits. You are tuning into episode 1 of the Unprepared Podcast by Misfit Athletics.
Fuck.
Wow.
Bless you. Wait, what?
The goal of this podcast is for me to come up with a topic and not tell my co-hosts or guests what that topic is until after this intro rant that I'm doing right here. And the goal of that is to have a nice, unadulterated, unprepared, authentic conversation about something.
Whoa.
You like that?
Are we guests or co-hosts this time?
I don't know.
Okay, good.
You're over there. I'm over
We're
here.
in the room.
I'm glad, I feel better over here. That's all that I can say.
Co-guests.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Sharpen the Axe. Head over to sharpentheaxeco.com. Use the code unprepared to save yourself 10% on the coolest gear in the game. This hat is not released yet, but it's going to be very soon. So if you like it, you'll be able to buy it and get 10% off.
Cheer.
You guys ready?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
Topic of the day is nature versus nurture. Nice broad topic, important topic, unique to, I think, our community. Initial thoughts.
I mean,
Question.
Yeah, go ahead and do your thing.
Are we speaking in the context of our community?
There's no rules, bro. It's
Yeah,
unprepared.
all right. Your turn.
That's my question. Personally, I'm a big believer in nurture. I think that carves essentially a person's beliefs, ideas, attitudes, how they react to situations. So I do think that nature has a part in the way we act, but I think a lot of it is just based upon our experiences and how things happen to us or how we choose to react to things, which I think is all tied into the way you were raised or the interactions you had as a kid or whatever type of situations popped up. So personally, I think that is a more heavy factor in determining how we react to certain things.
So to put this into context for you guys out there in internet land, nature versus nurture is just this idea. It's a conversation that happens a lot just in general, where your genetic abilities, do they, predetermine what's going to happen in your life? Or if this is a black and white issue, which it's obviously not, is what happens to you in your life? Does that create the scenario for what you become? Now, it's obviously a mix. We know that. But I think it's a really important topic in relation to our specific community. And I'm going to give you a text message that was sent to me from an athlete, and I'm not going to say who it was because I didn't ask them for permission to say.
Are we allowed to guess?
No, you're not.
Okay, never mind.
The question was, how much do you think capacity in the sport is genetically predetermined? I'm not sure if I just have bad anecdotes, but it seems like folks rarely make a second jump. They come into the sport and reach a competitive peak way more rapidly than in other sports, or at least that's how it appears to me. I was very intrigued by this, and the idea for this specific episode came from me trying to type a response that wasn't like thousands of words long, and I couldn't. It didn't feel like a text message response at all.
It feels like a phone conversation or a sit down over coffee type of thing.
And to give my 2 cents to get the ball rolling a little bit more is I didn't agree with almost anything in that text message. I think it's one of those things where I've watched people make big jumps. We've had people come to Misfit Athletics trying to make that second jump, feeling like either they peaked and they're kind of done and they don't have the passion anymore, and we've helped them with that through, community. Or people being like, I've been trying to do this for however long, I can't get over the hump, and then we help them get over that hump. So I've seen it enough to know that what this athlete is concerned with is not necessarily the case.
I think they're playing too much of the short game in that scenario. They're not looking at the long game and seeing that progress occurs in many different stages, and sometimes it doesn't necessarily correlate one-to-one with, hey, I PR'd a lift or I knocked 20 seconds off my mile time. But that that progression occurs over such a long period of time that often that I feel like you get lost in the forest kind of thing, where you see that you're, maybe you're improving, but maybe not the rate you want, but you don't make that leap. Then you fail to understand that you overglossed over so many little victories you had along the way.
Right.
And then you look at those little victories as not necessarily that jump forward, but instead I'm still not where I want to be, rather than each one of those little victories being a leap forward.
Well, and some people aren't willing to push themselves into the arena for it's going to be different for everybody what it takes to get over that hump. But some people aren't willing to accept that medicine when it's not something
bitter.
That's very fun.
It's bitter. It's not fun.
We know a bunch of people that are fit beyond anyone's, wildest dreams, and they move like absolute shit. And you got to slow down and figure this stuff out. I mean, I work with a ton of athletes whose raw strength is so much greater than their Olympic lifting. And it's like, at that point, you have to be a student of the game. You have to figure out every little detail. I mean, that's why I love weightlifting, because I can lift more weight than people that are stronger than me, or at least I used to be able to, because I did that. I figured that kind of thing out. And some people aren't willing to go there. That process is weird. And it's kind of funny to think that they're willing to work hard in the general sense, but not to work hard in the sense of like the endurance of getting better at something.
Being a coach at the two affiliates we have, and watching people choose to excel at the things they're good at and avoid the things they're bad at, and not realizing they could make more progress if they maybe pump the brakes a little bit on their strengths and really hammer their weaknesses. I just think of so many athletes, a great little example of this would be like if you rode and then had to do muscle ups after in our community. Like if you were really, really good at muscle ups, you need to row so hard you can't do muscle ups. If you're bad at muscle ups, if you row too hard, you ruin the workout. So I look at that, and it's just the medicine you're talking about is just really bitter. And, for a lot of us, still so focused on the end result, not the growth, but just, did I do better than so-and-so or not do better than so-and-so, blinds them to the fact they're actually losing an opportunity to grow by being so obsessed with just the end result, which I think kind of what you're going with here is that you find the things that aren't necessarily the most fun, but what will have the most bang for their buck if you can put your energy in that and accept the fact that there might be a little bit of regression for a while. There might be difficulty for a while, but that's our sport. And that's really any endeavor. If you are constantly on the path of least resistance, you're not going to grow. You're not going to get smarter. You're going to constantly find yourself disappointed with what you're learning and doing because you're not pursuing the hard things.
The athletes that we train, and I'm assuming the one that you're talking about is at a pretty high level. The sport, like the modern era of our sport itself, has been incredibly short. Like we're still very young in like the progression of our sport. And when you think about other professional sports that have been around for, decades and decades, the people who are the most successful, who are still progressing, started playing those sports and are the professionals now, as 3 and 4 year olds.
Right.
You hear about hockey players who started skating at 4 or skating at 2. They got their first gift was skates up in Canada or whatever.
Maine,
and
they make it all the way to Virginia Military Institute as the captain of the hockey team.
Yeah. That's the dream right there.
Cool.
D3 club hockey. No, but and if you're this, I'm assuming again, this athlete has probably, when CrossFit became a thing to compete in, they probably weren't 5-6 years old. They haven't been honing this skill for decades necessarily. They're probably well-versed in a lot of different athletics. But again, if we are to treat the games as a professional sport, which it is, the highest level are professional athletes, then look at it from the context of other professional sports where these people have been doing it for decades, and their lifespan at the top level is what's the average tenure of an NFL player? Like a couple of years tops?
Yeah.
A couple seasons?
I know that it's less than 3, and it might even be between 1 and 2.
Yeah, positional dependent, obviously, but
one thing that's unique there, though, that I'm kind of throwing in a wrench in what you're saying. I'm not saying that I disagree, but Urban Meyer, the former coach of Ohio State, he's not going to be coaching.
No.
Supposedly, he retired for the 12th time. Is widely considered the best recruiter in all of college sports. And I guess you can't really take that away from Nick Saban, but for this example, we use it. He does not recruit 4-star recruits that play one sport. He only recruits the multi-sport athlete because he is essentially saying, your high school coach doesn't know. I'm going to teach you how to play football. Yep. You need to show up and be able to, be versatile and run and jump and throw and do all of that different stuff. So to me, that again just brings in that bleed over, nature versus nurture.
Right. But the bottom line is that nature, if you're thinking of like from a nurture perspective, the top athletes have been doing this for decades before they make it to the professional level. Their tenure at the top, unless you are, the 1% of the 1% who's at that professional level, is very short. So like, I think
look at the gold standard in our sport. He didn't know that he was getting ready for it from a young age, but he was.
Right.
Unintentionally,
Yeah. I think that another reason why I thought that this would be a good example for the first episode is the three of us have a fairly unique perspective on this because we've been, in terms of the physical sense, we've been around this our entire lives. All three of us played sports all the way up into college. And then, so we were around the kids with all the nature, all the nurture, and everything in between. And then we started training who I think are the hardest working professional athletes in all sports.
Yeah.
So I think our perspective when it comes to that, we've seen every version of this person's so gifted. It seems like a curse more than a blessing. Like,
sure have.
And I can put some of that stuff on myself, like the stuff that came naturally to me. I never worked hard on when I was younger. Like it just like I did not throw a football in the off season. I might have thrown a plastic one at the beach once, but like I never worked on those things. And that can kind of tell you how someone that's not as gifted as you can go blazing past you because they're like, man, I'd love to figure this out.
Just say I'm the exact opposite. Like, don't come from a family of any athletes. My parents never played any sports at all. And all I really liked to do was hang out with my friends, and like I enjoyed working out. So almost the exact opposite. Like my entire, I'd say from 6th grade until obviously through football and through now, is that I really love the off-season type of stuff. I liked the getting in better shape. I liked the way I felt, the way my body performed. I enjoyed all those things. So I feel like I'm kind of the exact opposite here, where I'd be so obsessed with how much I can get better in a year, so that the next time the season came around, like that was like the showcase. Like that's the fun part. Like now it's time to show what all the hard work was worth. And it's just funny how you said that. Like we're almost like the exact opposite in that regard. Where,
and I mean, like if you can try to remember your freshman year of high school, were there kids that were much more physically gifted than you that by the time senior year rolled around, you were better than?
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, when I fortunately went to high school, there was only 2 kids ahead of me in the position that I played, and both of them were only 1 year older than me. And the difference was I was willing to outwork them every single day at practice to get the shot to be able to play. And, again, this is just I don't know if my coach looked at it as I have 4 years to develop this player, and that's because he's so young. This is an opportunity to really grow someone into a position, or it was solely based on the fact that I outworked people ahead of me. I'd like to think that it was the hard work is what separated us, because I remember a couple of sit downs where all 3 of us were sitting in front of me, and he's just like, I'm going to give this position to whoever works the hardest. So you can decide if you want it or not. I'm not going to. Like, you show me that this is your position and you want it. Take charge of it. I'm not going to just give it to anybody. So, and then, my peers, people that same age as me, didn't necessarily start all 4 years in high school, but you could see them going into that, like, oh, this is going to be your standout tailback. This is going to be your standout wideout. And because they didn't work as hard, that I took that leap ahead of them to the point where I was able to play past high school. So, I mean, it was definitely worth the effort of high school to be able to have that opportunity in college, because I got a really good college education based upon the fact that I did play football in high school. So, not necessarily 1-to-1, but definitely helped me both academically and, from a physical standpoint.
Right. Now, for you, I mean, how is that transition from like being an athlete yourself? You were a regionals athlete. And again, I think a lot of that was based on good old fashioned sweat equity.
Yeah. 0%. Gifted.
Watch him throw football.
Like, easy guy. All right. Jesus. Pump the brakes. All right.
Yeah, true.
You guys have to fired. You guys have to have a skate off after.
Okay, good. I just can't stop. I can't stop.
Yeah, I think I've always kind of been like that, similar, like not exceptionally gifted family athletically. And when I kind of picked up on this hard work can like pay off for you is when in high school when I was playing hockey. I didn't make the team freshman or sophomore year. Actually,
damn, it's like Michael Jordan all over again.
Yeah,
can't hold him down.
But in the off season, I found out like I started just training. Like I fortunately had enjoyed working out, enjoyed getting bigger and stronger, and it paid off. And it was people like were just like, holy shit, like you got a lot better. And my skills like still probably below average, but like the willingness to work hard. And one other thing that often I think gets misplaced is like, if you create an environment where you are known as somebody who works hard and other people like identify you and are just like, yeah, he works his ass off. Like I wish I could remember what the term is, but there's a psychological term for when other people tell you what you are, you believe what other people start to tell what you are. It's just like, oh yeah, he's the hardworking guy. And it's just like, yeah, I'm the fucking hardworking guy. And then it's like, would be a positive feedback loop in that situation. So you kind of build that reputation in your head, whether it's like, he's the high skill guy, he's the guy who can lift the most weight. Like you take that and use that psychologically, and that helps push you in that like kind of the nurture sense. You start to own that, and that becomes who you are,
right?
As somebody who works hard.
It's funny you see it in our sport too, because people who are known for their weightlifting, for example, constantly post about them doing weightlifting, and everyone's like, yeah, great, nice lift, good lift, they're very heavy, great. And then you see them compete at an event that has other things outside of 100 max lifting, and you can tell that, potentially they decided to focus on their strengths and not their weaknesses. And it's like, listen, you put your barbell in the corner of your gym and don't touch it again for like 6 months, and just go run and do pull-ups or like whatever your issue is. But I totally agree with that. You can see people who tend to drift towards the things they're good at and can be poisoned by that same idea, where someone's like, yeah, great job lifting. And you're like, yeah, I like lifting.
It works
lift
the
more.
other way too. You can easily self-sabotage yourself, or you hear it enough from other people who either jokingly or seriously poke fun at you. Like that obviously takes a toll, and that's part of the environment that you're working in. And whether or not you choose to listen to that is partially your own, responsibility. But
yeah, I mean, it's all about like, is the thing they're saying about you going to lead to your growth or not?
Right.
And it's kind of funny that we're talking about this specifically, because I was listening to an old episode of Hidden Brain yesterday or the day before, and it was about the personality tests. And it's the same concept of people love to be told something about themselves. But there was this guy who claimed that the Myers-Briggs test ruined his life, which is kind of intense.
Yeah.
But he took it as like a part of like a group thing at work. And people were like, oh, well, that's just because you're this. Like you can't perform this task because this test said so. And then he decided to start believing that about himself. And it was this huge issue. So that is an interesting kind of element to it.
Yeah, I think, man, one thing that this is kind of like tapering completely off the physical side of it, but one thing that we conversed about, conversation, like group discussions about it in the military is like, is our leaders born or are they made? And it's like, after having been in positions like leadership positions, you start to realize that it's, in my opinion, it's more about practice than anything. Like whether or not you're good or bad takes, like, some people are maybe more naturally, they're listened to more naturally, or they naturally carry more respect, but it takes practice more than anything. And I think you can be a naturally like born leader, but never express it, or you can be not naturally born like that and constantly put yourself or be put into situations that require it and develop that skill. It's the same. It's the same concept.
I mean, I never could have imagined being as comfortable with, this, I guess, training camp, seminar type stuff, public speaking, health and wellness talks, to big groups of people. Like I wouldn't have guessed that I would be like terrified of it.
Yeah.
But I never would have guessed that like it's a muscle just like anything else. And when you work on it, ta-da,
Yeah.
you get better at it. Like imagine that.
Weird.
The crossover, it's funny. I always go back to sports examples, but like there's all the stories about OJ Mayo's the basketball player who was supposed to be better than Jordan. And you've got the two other people that was said about all the time, LeBron and Kobe, and they're the pinnacle of nature and nurture, like all
For
the way
sure.
through, all the nature, all the nurture.
Yeah.
They come around every, I don't know, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, whatever, in given fields. And you can just tell that like, okay, well, you guys don't even belong in this conversation because like that's such an extreme that, you know, I mean, because most people don't know how hard those guys work.
Right.
I think they just assume that it is what it is. So you have someone like OJ Mayo who potentially maybe had more talent than all of them and just didn't pan out because he didn't work the way that he wanted to. He supposedly was really good when he was young and he was in all those teen camps that they do that, you know, have big money sponsorships behind him. And he challenged Jordan to one-on-one when he was a teenager.
Yeah.
And Jordan,
It's a great story.
he beat him 4 or 5 times in a row and made him keep playing in front of the camp. And he was like pushing him on the floor and like only something that Jordan could do. Well known as one of the biggest assholes in all of professional sports. Like just beat him senselessly into the ground. And this kid was all about that. He was all about the show of it and everything. And I don't even know what happened to him. I know that he was traded at some point and then he had an injury and he might've been suspended at one point.
Yeah, he played for the Grizzlies for a while and he never just lived up to the potential. He was a role player, didn't accept the fact that he could be the bench guy. He thought he's for a starter. And it was just, obviously, it's kind of like the end of Carmelo's career where like Melo should have been coming off the bench, but because of the way he is, was refusing to do so. And it just ended up being more of a distraction
And
than he was worth.
this is exactly what I'm talking about. This is the curse. This is the curse that's put on people with the like, you're amazing, you're amazing, you're amazing. You've got all of this talent. And then you don't go there and work, because in the opposite regard, you have all these people like JaVale McGee and all these other people that you remember being a super high draft pick and then you forget about. And now they've been around forever and they've been doing 10 points, 10 rebounds for who knows how long. And they were able to say, yeah, maybe I wasn't what everyone thought I was, but I worked my butt off and I've got a 12-year NBA career. Like,
there are a ton of those players in the NBA. It's crazy.
Yeah,
like, you just like, oh, they're going to be really good players. And then you're like, oh, they didn't do it.
And OJ Mayo could have been that player.
Sure could have.
And Carmelo could still be that player. I mean, Carmelo could do
He can still do
15 and 5 with his eyes closed, but he wants 35 and 0.
Yeah.
Prefers
That's always sad. He
35
wants
and 0.
his 75 points.
And then, you know, I'm not going to say any names and I can't imagine they would be watching this, but the two most gifted athletes that I've ever worked with hated training. They hated it so much. They couldn't train. And then when they liked to train, the expectations of being that thing, that, you know, poster child for certain stuff, or the guy that is always doing the crazy thing on Instagram, was way too much. And like, again, it to me, just that like that all out ability that like, oh, well, I don't have these genetics. Like, I'm not buying it. I really think that without the right environment, that's a curse.
Well, I think the genetics thing obviously determines that ceiling for a lot of people, but like, I still think everybody owes it to themselves to go out and see what your potential is. And at the end of the day, when the cards are on the table, you may not be as, you know, be at the level you desire to be at, but you will never truly know unless you actually try to attain that level. And I think that's the problem with most people, is that the long game is so challenging mentally to tell yourself, all right, I'm getting a little bit better. I'm getting a little bit better. I'm getting a little bit better. That it ends up being so much of a burden to the point where they're like, it's easier to do something else.
But a lot of athletes are okay with the long game and they play it. They just don't go down the right road. Yeah. They're in the gym every day. They're working their tail off, but they associate hard work with beating your head against the wall, which that's part of it. You have to have that, but that's not the only things you have to have. Humility within, like, it's going to be really hard to get better at this because I have to be okay with that, like, teensy weensy incremental growth, Whereas you do a back squat cycle or you do a bitch work cycle and you're like, boom, look at the screen or look at the weight that I had on there. Like you're trying to get better at gymnastics as a whole. You're trying to get better at like moving your body through positions. It's hard to measure that without going through it for years and then coming out the other side with like, okay, here's my placing in the actual standing.
Yeah. To me, like it's a good conversation to have, but kind of at the end of the day, it doesn't matter because what nature gave you is what nature gave you. Of the two variables, you can control the nurture portion. You can control up to a certain extent, obviously, how you're brought up, but the environment you put yourself in, the attitude, the demeanor that you have when it comes to expressing the nature that is given to you. But at the end of the day, you can only control one of those things. And it's just, are you willing to maybe put that big goal out there and then completely ignore it, put your head down and shoot to make a 0.1% improvement every single day until you get there. Like, again, the big goal doesn't matter. The fact that you are taking a small step toward that goal every day is everything. So it's not like put the goal out there, but other than that, like I hate to use the process just because I feel like it gets overused. So
cliches are cliches for a reason, though.
Yeah,
it's
true.
Real. It's something that people that get mad about cliches that aren't just like, okay, if you put the quote and there's flowers in the background and you're burning incense and you're in the lotus position,
good time.
Like you can get to a point where you're like a cliche of a cliche of a cliche, but a lot of times people get mad about that stuff and poo-poo it because they're not willing to do what other people are willing to do.
Yeah.
Like I think that's fairly plain and simple. And what I love about where science is heading is epigenetics are telling us that we can manipulate our genes within our lifetime. Like, okay, you were born with 23andMe will tell you whether you have elite, what do they call it? Like elite power output muscle fibers or something like that. If you don't do anything, that it's not processed. It doesn't manifest itself. It doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So like someone with those genetics that never, plays those type of sports when they're growing up isn't going to turn that gene on. It's not going to matter.
Yeah.
It's not going to make any difference whatsoever to the person who doesn't have that gene and then just works past it or manipulates the system and gets through that. Like that tells us that, the whole, well, you're not good enough because the first time you tried, you weren't great is the crock of shit.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I do think that everybody is a genius at something. Obviously, it's just finding out what that is or finding out what you enjoy doing, what you're kind of passionate about. And then
I think that's more like, I think the passion part is
yeah. Yeah. You have to be, whether it's getting better at a sport, like you said, the most gifted athletes you've ever worked with hated training. I don't know if did they like competing? They like the competition aspect. They just didn't like to work at it, or it was just something that they're good at. So you get
some of them do and some of them don't. But it's one of those things where maybe they can showcase their talents one day a year, but then if that goes wrong, it's all over.
Yeah,
right.
That
was the only thing.
Yeah.
My opportunity to show off is here. I screwed up because I didn't train hard enough.
Yeah.
And now I don't want to do this anymore.
Right.
Like I can't do this. So I think this is such an important topic in general. I think it's important for whether we're talking about school or CrossFit or another sport or your career in your life, any of this stuff. Like the end goal, obviously we're obsessed with this whole thing. We own a business called Sharpen the Axe. Like the end goal that's not the thing.
No.
This is how people are choosing to live their lives every single day, 7 days a week. Like rest day doesn't count because that there's complex and
there's other stuff
athletic
going on.
greens and they're, swimming around in a
athletic
pool
greens
of their sweat and a sauna. Like it's all day, every day. And that's how people are choosing to live their entire life. They're basing everything, almost everything that they do on this goal. But they only get to test that out once or twice a year at most.
Yeah.
So it's not about that. It's about your life. It's about how you're choosing to live every single day. That's why the process is so important. That's why people need to realize that, well, I'm probably going to keep doing this no matter what. So like, just let go of that. Like,
I better really fucking like this.
Yeah,
if I'm
I better
gonna
like
do it
this
every day.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And some people might like it and not even know it.
Well, so we work with plenty of athletes who say like, oh, I have to. And we have to rephrase that. I do this often with my athletes. Like, you're choosing to do so. So like, what's nice about that is you obviously have a choice. You could not do it or do it. But two, you then get to decide what your mindset is going into this. And this is something that I know you've worked with me personally and other athletes. Is like, you have to change the way you approach it from a mindset perspective, or you're never going to have the wherewithal to be able to get through what you need to get through to get to your goal. So at the end of the day, you get a chance to choose this type of stuff, and you better make sure that, if you want to pour all your heart and soul into it, like, you're actually committed to what you're doing versus just being like, I have to.
No one's holding a gun to your head. You can, if you want to stop, grow up and stop.
Yeah.
And I'd bet that 90% of the people listening to this podcast have already made that decision without knowing it.
Mm-hmm.
They already do like it. They love the community. They love being a part of this huge, crazy thing. It's exciting. It's a lifestyle that's healthy in most regards. Obviously, being singularly focused and obsessed on one thing can lead you down certain paths. But it's about, I think so much of it's about reframing that mindset. Like you just said, you're talking about someone who's already made that decision to go all in on something like this. And then they're maybe lying in bed at night wondering, why can't I work harder? Why don't I do this or that? It's probably some sort of part of the process that's just kind of letting go. Like, show up, get it done, rinse or repeat, that kind of thing.
Yeah, again, that goes back to that, like, the egocentric mindset. Like, I have to be better. I'm better. All my worth is my score in this workout or whatever. And like, rather than, we talk about being obsessed with just a little bit of improvement relative to you. That's, to me, having that conversation of, with an athlete, look at yourself versus you, not look at yourself versus all the people that are around you. Yes, you get measured on that in our sport every single year during the Open or whatever competition you're doing. But at the end of the day, like, you have to be obsessed with you versus you and nobody else. And if you are looking at other people too frequently, I think that can poison your mindset. And I think that, we talked about some of our athletes previously, that was their greatest downfall, was their only measuring stick was them versus everybody else and never them versus them, which is not an easy thing to accept. But if you can accept it, you're more likely, I think, to keep going and keep pursuing whatever the endeavor is.
Closing thoughts, Hunter. Ted, can you play cricket sounds?
You always have a choice. You can choose to accept that you were either blessed with or not blessed with a certain skill set that does or does not line up with what you want to do or what you're good at. And you can't control that. What you can control is how you choose to work with what you do have. Like, I think anybody can, given the appropriate amount of time, resources, and dedication, like, anybody can go to the CrossFit Games. Anybody can be almost anyone can be a professional
Thanks,
athlete.
Hunter.
Well,
I mean, give him new ankles, okay?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, given the time and resource, if you have the money and the resources, you get Achilles surgery, or I don't know, if someone snaps your ankles over your,
Doctors to give
Get
us
one from like an
sticks
antelope
your
or a
foot
kangaroo or
in your
something.
ass. But
Yeah.
no, I mean, that's the difference. The people who are hugely successful don't necessarily have that balance. Like, they're singularly focused on being the best that they can be. Every single bit of time, energy, money, resources is dedicated toward that. And that's why some people are more successful. If you're going to compare yourself to somebody else, ask yourself what you're doing, and does everything you do on a daily basis revolve around getting better at this one thing that you say you want to be the best at, or is it like a half-hearted effort? And like, Don't answer the question yourself, and you'll find the solution.
I don't know. The genetics is an excuse to me, and in almost every single case.
Yeah.
I'm not
Okay.
I'm not
Sorry.
buying, yeah, I'm not buying
It
it.
sucks to suck. Like,
I love that quote. My favorite.
well, I mean, yeah. Okay. What are you going to do about that?
Right.
Nothing. Okay. What are you going to do about it?
What are you going to do about it, pal?
I don't know. Get new ankles, I think. Antelope ankles.
Go figure. Antelope ankles.
Could they be daintier than they already
Cantaloupe
are?
ankles. You can get some
I
cantaloupe
think
ankles.
they're already the diameter of an antelope's ankles.
Be an improvement, it'd be bigger ankles.
Yeah, they'd be huge. What you got for me, Sherb?
I mean, I just think that everyone owes it to themselves to find out. I mean, I personally believe that most people choose to pursue easier things. And I think that as a result holds them back or doesn't allow them to grow as a person or whatever their endeavor is in a way that, there's potential for. So I think truly everyone owes it to themselves to find out, no matter what your goal is, to put the work in. And at the end of the day, be happy with whatever comes out. Like if you put the effort in and you don't get what you want to go, well, at least you tried and and you put what you think is the effort in. And hopefully you have the people and resources around you to give that as great a shot as possible. But at the end of the day, like be proud with your effort and realize that you have opportunities ahead of you. And if you fail at one, all that is learning experience to be like, all right, well, I should refocus on maybe finding something else that maybe I could be better at. It's no different than,
I mean, people didn't know that Hunter Wood was cut from his sophomore high school hockey team.
it's true.
Like that's not part of the story.
Yeah. Well, I was just thinking of like, you go back and you talk about like Kobe who retired from basketball and he goes, if I'm only known for basketball at the end of my life, like I fucked up. I didn't do what I was supposed to do.
And he wins
like,
an Oscar like a year later.
I know,
and
it's
you're like,
crazy.
What the fuck?
So I'm saying he goes, basketball is not my only achievement. It's not what defines me. It was a defining portion of his life. But now he said, if I'm going to truly be a success and, hopefully have my name carry on for generations, like there are other things I can contribute to the world besides putting a basketball in a hoop. Like that's
But he's also said part of the reason he was such a tremendous basketball player is because when that was his focus, his life was so imbalanced toward basketball that that's all that mattered.
Oh, I agree. I think that's still important to not acknowledge that he put all of his eggs in one basket for basketball. Yep. But at the end of the day, if you decide to take on an endeavor and it doesn't turn out the way you want it to, don't be like, well, life's over. Right. I'm done. Like
gotcha.
There are opportunities to learn from that and go, all right, well, maybe I learned I'm really good at weightlifting, or maybe I decided that I wanted to start doing 5Ks or marathons, or maybe you learned that like I really enjoyed the coaching my friends around me aspect of CrossFit. Like there are other avenues that you can express your passion that aren't necessarily the athletic endeavor itself. So I just look at it as, if a door closes, there's potential that another one just opened, and you have to keep exploring and find that thing that, gets you out of bed in the morning.
Yeah. I think the value of hard work is less in the end result and more in what you've done, what you do on a daily basis to make that work. Like the plan is nothing, but planning is everything. Every bit you work harder pushes you toward either your goal or another opportunity that's going to move you continue progressing forward. But if you run into that door and don't try to beat it down as hard as you can, then don't ask anybody why you didn't do what you wanted to do in life or for your specific goal.
Yeah. If you guys really like this stuff, search for the story about the Olympic trainer that when Kobe was on the Olympic team that found him in the gym like 3 hours prior to practice and then an hour after shooting like 1,000 basketballs or whatever. Like that kind of thing can give you the inspiration of like, okay, how is it possible for these people to already be better than everyone else and still kind of have that drive? Like
something happened to him. I mean, I don't know about Kobe, for example, but like you talk about other people like
Hunter,
someone like Tom Brady,
high
who's
school hockey,
jaded that he got drafted at the very end and realized that, he'd spent his entire life being kind of like, I guess you'll serve our needs here. But like there's Drew Henson and these other players that we want to put in the game who look far superior when you just look at them, like throw a football, for example. But the hours and the dedication and the practice that was put in to allow him to pass athletes around him, like no one expects someone that comes basically in the last round of the draft to become known as the best player potentially of all time that doesn't happen on accident. Like he put the work in to make that happen.
I think I have a unique perspective on, I think that there's another ingredient to this, and you just reminded me of it. I'm glad that you said Tom Brady's name. Tom has the holy trinity: nature, nurture, and positivity. That guy is better than anyone. He could be the best professional athlete ever. He's better than everyone. Normally, like LeBron decides who his coach is. LeBron shows up at a team and he's like, I mean, it's me or him. Like, and he knows the answer already. He's not it's not an ultimatum. Yeah. It's fire that guy now. Like that kind of thing. You think about all of the other people, and one of the characteristics about them is that edge that they have, but it's black and white. Brady, you see him all the time on the sidelines screaming in people's faces and whatnot, but like he's a company man. And like having a company man that's like so far above everybody else, but decides to live down there,
gets everyone to buy in.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And for me, it's all about being able to mix the things that I've learned throughout my life and in this community is hard work always wins and positivity always wins. It sounds so fucking cheesy.
Yeah.
Also, I'm a Steelers fan. I'm not a Patriots fan. So if you're like, oh, they're up in Maine, he's talking about Tom Brady. No. I think Bill Belichick is, whatever.
The best coach ever? Yeah, you're right.
Yep. So yeah, it sounds cheesy, but it's really important to understand, because I have in my life used negativity to try to fuel myself. Negativity in terms of like negative self-talk. Like when you're getting ready to do something, or you're like, don't you dare be, a bitch about this or whatever, like that, versus like me, like getting this, like when I did the 30 days of rowing, I know that I like to sprint. It's like the only thing that I like to do. So I would tell myself during it, you're getting through this, you're getting through this. And then the final 25% of everything, I would force myself to smile and be like, I like this. I like the pain. This is good. And I would push, and I felt physiologically different while I was trying to sprint versus the like insane fight or flight where you're like, and you're on the rower and like you're trying harder and the pace is going down and you're just like, shit, this isn't what I want. I would literally be like, I can't wait until that final, say it's a 1K, that final 250s around. I'm going to pull as hard as I can 25 times and I'm going to laugh while I'm doing it.
Yeah.
And it made this massive difference for me. And then when I started doing that in the gym, when I'm like, we did the 300 meter runs yesterday, and I told myself that my favorite part was going to be running back on the third one. So we did 150 out, 150 back. And I just told myself, like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how you feel at all if you just laugh about it and say, let's do this.
Yeah.
Let's go. You're going to do it anyways. You're going to be in pain anyways. If you can fuel that with like, I'm doing this for a reason. This is literally making me a better person. Like, I got this. I can do this. Like, that sort of self-talk will completely manipulate my physiology.
Yeah.
Like, I feel so much
accepting that, like either adversity or kind of like seeking that kind of stuff out. To me, like the negative self-talk puts kind of an artificially low ceiling on your capability, whereas like the positive self-talk puts an artificially high floor on your capability. Right. It's like I can, the sky's the limit if that positive self-talk exists, but if I've got that negative loop, then I got a low ceiling that I'm going to run into.
I'm more liable to quit when it gets really, really bad. You think about something like the assault bike. Like you can quit and people don't know. You can just be like, you know how it is on the bike, man. Yeah. You know how it is. Yeah. Like,
same reason people fall apart on mile 23 of a marathon.
Yes.
Like if everybody tricked you and told you it was if everybody tricked you and knew it was a 20-mile race and you went 23 and you're just like, oh yeah, you were done 3 miles ago.
Right.
Like, and you quit. It's like, oh, well, that wasn't so bad.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
And that happens. I mean, we know all about that. We have 1-round workouts. We have 20-round workouts.
If that was 3, that would have been fine, but like...
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's the same every single time because you have that mindset of like, in a 3-round workout, it's crush it, die, cool, it's over. Like that kind of thing. But what would it be if it was 4, if it was the same workout? What would it be if it was 5? What would it be if it was 10?
Yeah.
Like, how does that all... It's all about that perception when you go into it.
Yeah.
I think my big like closing statement is just that if you're asking questions like this, you're letting someone else write your story, and like we're all gonna die, and that sounds pretty shitty to me. Like,
Asking the question, is it nature versus nurture?
yeah. Do I get to decide, or did someone else decide before?
You answered your own question.
Was it
if you're
decided when
asking
I
that.
was living between my dad's legs? Like, was it decided then? You like that?
I'll do the snippet
like
for the
that?
podcast preview.
That just sounds terrible to me. Like, what's the point of what we're doing here if this was all already predetermined?
Yeah.
Like, I'm just not buying that
Yeah.
at all.
Seal it on that. Good thought.
Ladies and gentlemen, that was episode 1 of the Unprepared Podcast by Misfit Athletics. If you like what we're doing and you want us to do more, you know what I'm about to say. Like, follow, subscribe, comment, all that stuff on social media, YouTube, iTunes. Let us know what you think. We will be back next week with a return of the Misfit Project.